That is right. It is Ball Mania Launch Day, and we are here. Despite Underdog not going global yet, of course, I had to find a way in. We will be drafting in Ball Mania. We're going to be talking about the greatest best ball contest there is. Myself and Tyler, Fantasy Sanctuary, Underdog Best Ball Show. Let's get into it. Yes, the draft is over. It is time to start drafting. Like I said, Underdog won't let me into the draft streets. They're afraid of the red coats, but there's always a loophole. Joining me for these Monday shows from now until the NFL season is my good friend Tyler, who you most definitely know from the best ball streets. Tyler, great day to be great, right?
It's a fantastic day to be great because it is Ball Mania Launch Day, baby. It's time to make some money.
Absolutely. And if you are here in the chat, we truly appreciate you right now. We have got a lot of best ball content coming this year. I mean, this just feels like Christmas morning. You go on YouTube today and it is just stream after stream after stream. So many good people out there. And we are going to get to some stuff in the chat in just a moment. But the place we kind of have to start with this, it is the prize structure to the best ball contest out there, Ball Mania. Tyler, when this dropped yesterday, what was your first impressions of it?
I dropped down to my knees. I threw my hands in the air to the great God of best ball and said, thank you so much. This payout structure is gorgeous. It's so nice. Making the finals is not going to feel like a demoralizing loss if you didn't make the top 10. This is fantastic. I'm super excited. I'm so glad they listened to, community input and adjusted the payouts to be, flatter and still super rewarding for making it and making like each jump up the ladder.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's kind of really impressive here. Like you go back over the last couple of years, like the regular season stuff was fantastic and it was really worthwhile and it was a lot of fun. But this is the Best Ball Mania structure for the people from the best ball company out there. And speaking of the people, we'll be a little bit remiss to not talk about what's going on in the chat right now. We've got Bindles joining the channel. Truly appreciate you, Bindles. And if you want to join, you can join from less than $1 a month. But he's not only doing that, he's gifting 5 Fantasy Sanctuary memberships. When you join, let me know if you do not get the link to the Discord, because that is where there is so much more additional stuff. You've got all of Richard's Dynasty material, all of my best ball ranking and best ball resources. And if you join as a golden deck chair member, you get 40% off all of Spike Week's products. It really does pay off to be a member with us. But before we jump into these drafts, Tyler, you've not been in any drafts yet. Have you seen any of the streams today of people in the drafts?
You know what? I've been feverishly taking in these tidbits being shared on Discord and Twitter by the fine, lovely community that I cherish so much. We're seeing a lot of rookie fever. We're seeing a lot of go get your guys. And that's what you're going to see a lot. ADP is, what we just last had before the draft, and you're going to get a lot of shifts, a lot of guys dropping, a lot of guys shooting up. You got guys like Xavier Worthy that someone I get really excited about and taking the 3rd round, who previously was going in, the 100th, 110s. So I'm seeing a lot of live a little season, and it's exciting because, for every guy that you're excited about getting, might blow up a stack. Someone just said, I need to go get him. So it's going to be full chaos today, but in the chaos, we can make some diamonds from the pressure. So I'm excited to jump in.
Absolutely. And the Austin Tea Party might be the best name I've heard for this. Pan-Pacific, Pan-Ocean, global best ball shows we're going. And yeah, in terms of the rookies, are there any who kind of stood out over the last few days that you think people are going to get really carried away with drafting when it comes to Underdog?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have a feeling Blake Corum is going to be a guy that people get really excited about because he's got a huge fan base for the Michigan folks. They just won a championship. He had a pretty good combine, and now he just got drafted to be the RB2 behind a guy that it seems like half the industry wants to say he shouldn't deserve all those touches. So I think you're going to get polarizing guys like Blake Corum, where some people think it's his job to come take. Guys like Xavier Worthy, you're going to get to tell yourself a story that Rashid Rice gets suspended for half the season, and Hollywood Brown is fake Hollywood. Might as well call him the moon landing because it never happened. And Xavier Worthy is new Tyreek Hill, and why would you not take Tyreek Hill in the third round? So, yeah, I think a couple of those rookies that have like a lot of juice that had really good landing spots. Probably Ricky Pearsall, another one that like really exciting dude, got taken first round, but you're gonna forget that like I know there were trade rumors about Debo and Ayuk, but those guys are still on the roster, and if they get traded away, it's for next year's draft picks. So it's like these rookies that have like tantalizing talent profiles, but there's not a clear path to like really making it year one until something happens. You're gonna get just deciding that go with the rumor type of stuff. So I think a few guys like that stick out that I don't know that I want to be as in on as some other folks until we get more information.
But the one player for me, I think you make great points, was Troy Franklin, because it felt like by the time Troy Franklin got drafted, everybody was so desperate for him to get drafted. The disrespect had been handed out to him.
I was one of them.
I mean, at the same time, I like Troy Franklin, and when you go and watch Bo Nick's film, all Bo Nick's best plays were Troy Franklin plays.
Mhm.
But the NFL definitely told us to an extent what they thought about Troy Franklin. I think he's going to be a fun player for best ball, but I kind of worry a little that he could end up being one of these players, like Darnell Mooney a couple of years ago, where particularly if Cortland Sutton got moved along, you'd fall into this thing of, well, somebody's got to catch the ball. And I'm always very wary since Darnell Mooney about the whole somebody's got to catch the ball. So, yeah, he stuck out to me. In terms of underdog drafts, particularly, how coming off last year, is there any big takeaways for you about how you want to approach your draft portfolio for this year?
Yeah, I was able to hop on a stream early this year with Bendels, and I went through like resolutions, and every month since then, and especially as I maxed all the pre-draft tournaments on Underdog, I was reminding myself my resolutions. And one of my biggest ones was to make sure that my quarterbacks are stacked and at minimum skinny stacked. And we've seen multiple quarterbacks, like 3 quarterback builds, work when they're mid to late range because the guys that you can stack them with are affordable, but also you can have those stacks. So I think we were reminded once more the power of stacks. They don't necessarily have to be onslaughts, but you got to have your quarterback stacked up some way, somehow. And don't be afraid to diversify who you're stacking them with, because we don't know over the full season of chaos. And even drafting right now, we've got a full, 4 months of rookie training camp, preseason. There's going to be a lot of news, a lot of information, a lot of injuries. Things are going to shift a lot around. And so taking guys on teams to stack with and being mindful of that. There are ambiguous wide receiver and running back rooms, and there are very concentrated wide receiver and running back rooms. So being cognizant of that contextually and stacking that, but also not being afraid to diversify in places that either have less, concentration, more ambiguity, or just contingent wise. Like halfway through the season, guys could get hurt, and so your guys like Ricky Pearsall or like your Luke McCaffreys in Washington, or even further down in the undrafted charts, like guys that have good talent could emerge with a contingent value upside. So I'm going to be mindful about diversifying stacks and diversifying the team builds. One thing that really bit me last year was too many of my teams had the same combos of quarterbacks and those stacks. And so when those things crumpled in on each other, the whole roster, collapsed on itself.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because if you kind of boil it back down to the DFS principle, where we get a lot of the ideas around stacking and similar stuff from, if I told you that Lamar Jackson was going to be the QB you needed in week 17 and you had 150 entries for the Millie Maker, you are going to throw some lineups in there with Nelson Aguilar. You are going to throw some lineups in there with Rashard Bateman, some with Isaiah Likely, and some with even the running backs, and feed into the idea, okay, Lamar gets a couple of touchdowns, but then the running backs get the others. So diversifying how those stacks look is absolutely a good idea. We are going to jump into a draft. If you want to fire that up, I will change us over here. In terms of these drafts, what is it you're kind of hoping to see from Underdog in terms of the next contests which they roll out?
I really enjoyed the Eliminators last year. I know a lot of people did, so looking forward to that. And it seems like they might release something with regular season prizes in order to capture, that essence of what was dropped from this version of BBM. Um, I also enjoyed some of the mid to higher stakes contests with flat payout structures, small finals. Those are really exciting too. So I'm excited to kind of dip my toes into things that are, this is more of a lotto, but also it'd be nice to have these like mid to high stakes leagues with small finals again. And I've heard some whispers of some fun versions of and tweaks on things, including weekly winners. So it'll be nice to have a full smorgasbord of contests once more, and with even more mindfulness on what we as the community said for like payouts and advanced structures.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that's been clear since Hope and Yumi came on board with Underdog. They are listening, they are making stuff that we want to see, and it's only going to keep getting better. Shout out Omega King right there next to us. I think that, anytime you see Omega in the draft room, you're going to have to be particularly sharp. Where we're going here, I'll let you take the first pick of the first Underdog draft show on Fantasy Sanctuary.
Well, the camera just got so excited that Tyreek Hill fell to fourth that we're freezing up. So I feel like we gotta get Tyreek, and as I try to reset on the fly.
So, question in the chat from Historically Anomalies: is your only best ball option DK? I can play on drafters unofficially because drafters just kind of let anybody in and don't really care too much. FFPC I can play on, finished 8th in the Superflex contest over there last year. But yeah, I do play much more on DraftKings than anywhere else. But this is the only one that really matters. God's game, God's platform. This is right. So the moment you take Tyreek Hill, how much do you see Tua being a must add to stacks? Do you feel like he adds enough value, or do you think we kind of saw last year a bit of a shine come off on Tua and he's a bit less necessary? Maybe we should be aiming for somebody with a higher upside at quarterback.
Yeah, I do enjoy 5 minutes ago saying, diversify, stacking is important, and then having to take Tyreek there, which I think taking him above Chase is prudent for several reasons. But for Tua, the problem I struggle with is how efficient the running game is, and they just added Jalen Wright, who is another home run Ras King hitter. And you've seen that late season, they have no problem in this Shanny system run by Mike McDaniel, very, very good at utilizing speed and space. Is that if Tua is struggling or the pass game is struggling to really get there against these like too high, coverages, they're just going to sit there and ground and pound for 200 plus rushing yards. And all of a sudden, Tua's not getting that kind of like passing volume because it's lower ADOT stuff to just move the chains. So Tua's one of those quarterbacks where like, he's going to start all season. I have no problems with like the health thing. He was one of my highest drafted quarterbacks last year. But we have seen the last few years him really fall off efficiency wise. And then volume that follows that, compensating for the pass drop off of just not really mattering in the top 24 quarterbacks. And part of that is just because he's a pocket passer. He's not going to be rushing. And so I feel like if you're taking Tua, it's got to be because you're onslaughting him with pass catchers. And while I say all that, them adding an actual tight end that can run routes and have yak ability in Jonnu, I think is huge for being able to have a middle of the field target that's not Tyreek and Waddle, who were banged up for parts of the year as well. So sussing out how much of that Tua drop, that's tough. So I wouldn't call him a priority, but stacking is important. Stacking does build expected EV, and I think building on that is important. So while we're talking about that, how are we feeling about the second pick with Devon Achane getting a little bit of backfield competition and having?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather go Ayuk or Nico there, or even Neighbors. I think I think we're going to see Achan drop down into the third round over the next week or so. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, I'd be okay if Achan makes it back around, maybe adding him there. But I think when you start seeing the Jalen Wright ad, Raheem Mostert has felt undervalued ever since the start of drafting season. So for me, Devon Achan is a player that I'm kind of in a wait and see mode for the minute.
Yeah. I tend to agree. I still think I view Jalen more as a McDaniels had to get his speed guy, and Mostert has an easy contract out after this year. He's also 32, and that was the first year he'd ever stayed healthy. So I view Jalen more as a contingent play like Blake Corum, that the team needs somebody behind them because he's still young and he's still ripped off 4 touchdowns in a high-scoring offense. But volume definitely is a concern. That said, it's
Well, I think the thing with Achan is it's like we know what his weekly ceiling is, and we know that he could destroy a slate. I think I just worry about the fact that the knock on him coming in was he was undersized and he wouldn't hold up, and then he didn't hold up, and it was just kind of yeah. But I'm definitely not out on him. I'd just like to kind of wait and see a few days.
yeah.
And
I think the
yes,
other thing.
indeed. Sorry, let me just say this.
Go
Tyler
ahead.
does have a show joining us on the Fantasy Sanctuary for every Monday, all the way through till the season starts. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button down below as we come back onto the clock with Tyreek Hill and Brandon Ayuk. Jalen Waddle sitting right near the top of the queue. Do you want to go over Miami double stack?
I would love to do that. I think that's a prudent thing to do for the efficiency and the scoring of this offense. He just got extended as well. And then he had a lot of really awesome underlying usage that he just wasn't able to capitalize on, especially in the red zone. So I think that's another place that we saw Mostert take a lot of touchdowns away, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see that many rushing touchdowns again. And both Waddle and Tyreek could benefit from that.
Yeah, and Waddle's a player that, we heard Mike McDaniel last year talk about at the bye week about how it was his one mission was to try and get Jalen Waddle going, and it didn't really go that way, but it feels like it can definitely happen with him having a full off season to get healthy. So yeah, I'm very much backing on Waddle and think he can have a nice bounce back. Let's see. So through 3 picks, we're definitely leaning towards, I guess, what would be a tendency for us on a wide receiver heavy draft. But when you kind of look back last year, there was a lot of talk about how the year before you'd needed 5 wide receivers before you got to round 9. That played out again last year. Like your advance rate, if you waited until round 10 to take your 5th wide receiver, was no better than 13.6%. Whereas if you took your 5th wide receiver before round 10, you were looking at advance rates in the positive around 17, 18%.
Mm-hmm.
So it just feels like, yes, the wide receiver avalanches are going to keep on coming. But at the minute, early doors, I'm quite happy to keep just leaning into that.
Well, especially early on. Like we know that zero running back benefits from chaos, and the most amount of chaos you're going to see is from your earliest start point out. And so building through, high score. I mean, I love to score. So I want guys that can score. I want guys on teams that are going to score a lot. And with all the running back movement, I'd rather not pay up for the premium of certainty as we talk right now before training camp, before everything's been settled, because that's fragile certainty in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, I think drafting early, leaning towards a later zero running back build benefits a lot of ways, especially on a platform like Underdog, where, as you can see, the receivers are going earlier and earlier than a lot of other places, even being half PPR. So I'm happy to build in some of that chaos that we can benefit from having really good profiles at wide receiver, having to start 3 in this format.
So how do you feel about the quarterback situation? We've only seen 2 go off the board in the first 3 rounds. Like this time last year, it felt like we were seeing sometimes 3, 4 already go by this point. Do you feel like the prices are more palatable this year?
I think part of this is just before the industry projections blow out, and also you've got the most amount of sickos like us drafting this early that have been drafting for months now or thinking about drafting for months now. So we see that the more casual folks that come in and start drafting later in the season will push up those quarterbacks a lot. And I think partly right now it's just we know scarcity from the top tier running backs and receivers are more of an issue than the quarterbacks. And I think part of that is we saw how many late to mid round guys, especially through rushing, have or arbitrage through those early quarterbacks. And we now have a crop of rookie quarterbacks incoming that have a really nice rushing floor and ceiling. So I think even more so now, taking a Josh Allen or a Hurts early doesn't provide you the edge you'd like, considering those other guys with those rushing profiles. I think third round for guys like that is fine. You're just talking about opportunity cost, and part of what's helping that right now, I think, is just how kind of flat it is. So I think taking those guys to stack is very palatable versus the early to mid second you were paying last year, for sure.
Nice. So we're about to be back on the clock. Obviously, 3 wide receivers deep. Are you in on Rashad White, or is it sort of like, do you want to stick with either tight end or wide receiver here?
I think tight end or receiver here makes a lot of sense.
I'd be down for. I'd lean like if we can get Kelsey and then Mahomes. I kind of feel like that's going to be a stack which goes up in price as people realize, okay, well, Patrick Mahomes, yes, he doesn't possess the rushing floor like the other quarterbacks, but he's in the best situation that he's been in for a couple of years now, and he can absolutely get back to the days where he was throwing like for 300 yards, 12 games a season. So yeah, I'd feel fairly good about that if Mahomes comes back round to us. In terms of the other drafts, we do see Rashad White go off just before us, and then CJ Stroud stacked. Oh, just missed out on the stack for Omega King. CJ Stroud is definitely going to be one of those controversial people that all through the best ball season, the opinions are going to wildly differentiate on whether people want to go with Stroud or not. At the minute, he just feels a little too expensive for me. I know that Established a Run put out their rankings today, and Adam Levitan was tweeting about the fact that people are losing their minds because they have Anthony Richardson ahead of CJ Stroud. But I mean, that's where I'd lean. CJ Stroud didn't even have that many top 12 fantasy finishes last year. He's a great quarterback. His best performance was the best quarterback performance of all last year. But yeah, and of course, we miss out on Mahomes, who was taken by the CJ Stroud drafter at the 1 spot, which, not going to like that.
Do we want to stack teams for Rashee, or do we like Cooper to add?
I'd go Cooper.
Awesome.
So can you go back to the draft board if that's not going to completely keep you in the dark? So the team after us is currently 4 running backs deep and then takes the tight end. Honestly, like, I feel like I've kind of got to mention this, but like a few weeks back, I tweeted about this. Last year, teams who selected their RB3 before round 5 and the tight end 1 before round 5 had positive advance rates. There were 733 teams that did that on Underdog last year. They went with 5 running backs total, and they ended up with positive advance rates at 17%. So 4 is definitely one more than I would have pushed it. But I think there's going to be some situations this year where I'd absolutely be willing to go to 3 running backs, see if I can mix that with an elite tight end, and just go slightly against the wide receiver heavy rooms. Tyler, is that something I could tempt you into at some point?
I can be tempted in a lot of different ways. And apologies to everybody else. Who knows why my cameras decided to shut me in the dark? But I guess Big Underdog isn't too happy about having a red coat in their midst. So I will claim the cabal is trying to ruin us.
Well, that's it. And back in the chat, we had this question earlier. Hopefully, the contract has been signed for how these two will split the winnings of BBMV. Well, I can tell you now, I will be going on a one-way flight to Jeremy Levine and just slapping down my half of the money and telling him it's time to go. Time to bring Underdog to the Brits.
We're back. Hey. We started talking money, and I made it work. That's just how this goes.
So after this draft started off quite tame, now we got sniped by the 101 who went CJ Stroud and Patrick Mahomes unstacked. And then the Jalen Hurts owner also added Anthony Richardson. Any kind of thoughts on how you typically like to pivot when you're thrown into these situations?
I immediately start thinking about quarterbacks with mid to late players that I can easily stack, especially if I like them. So right now I'm thinking, you've got the rookies, Jaden, Caleb, Drake May. You've also got the mid-range guys like Goff and Trevor Lawrence. Because again, I think skinny stacks are not something we should be afraid of going towards, especially sniping. I mean, we look at Fareed that won BBM last year. He got sniped twice back to back on quarterbacks he wanted, and he won because he just built a later stack, and he had his other guys skinny stacked. So that's just where I start thinking immediately as guys are obviously playing. I mean, I don't know if they realize this, but the regular season prizes are no longer, on the playing field. So you're not helping yourself by going quarterback early and giving that much draft capital, especially if they're not both stacked by now. So I'm fine knowing that they're boosting my EV in this room and in the tournament because my team will be stronger. And I think partly that helps us do that is some wide receivers early to outscore what they're missing out at the position early as well.
Exactly. It's that whole thing of, we can dominate the flex, go all the way back to the original zero RB theory, and it still holds strong. So we're 2 picks away, 4 wide receivers, an elite tight end who's just signed a new contract. Anything standing out to you, Tyler?
I noticed a room that's just having fun doing whatever it wants to do. I will say I'm still a little bit surprised that Joe Mixon's going as late as he is, considering he won the draft, I think. I think now is an okay time to start considering running backs and quarterbacks in this range. Do you have a lean early?
So I'd be fine with David Montgomery, kind of James Conner. I think they're both fine. But I mean, equally, I could go Brian Thomas and just push this one more pick if you like.
I love Brian Thomas. He provides us a later stack with Trevor Lawrence, and I'll get plenty of that.
It's quite all right. The party's going to be going on all summer. Nobody's too late for it here. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We'll be doing DraftKings streams on Wednesdays. I've already got a couple of guests lined up over the next few weeks for when that launches. And every Monday night, we will be back here on Underdog on our mission to win $1.5 million and whatever other contests they throw at us. So how do you feel about David Montgomery's price this year? Obviously sitting there at ADP of 72 currently.
I'm fine with it. I mean, JJ Zacharyason's done a lot of good, data on if you've got a running back going early. It's typically not great for both of them panning out. The exception that we kind of see is that a backfield like Detroit an offense is going to score a lot with a non-rushing quarterback and a team that insists on, so many red zone rushes. And David Montgomery, even in the playoffs, was someone that they wanted to get involved with in goal line packages. I think it's very palatable, especially in zero running back rooms, because his floor and ceiling, especially contingent wise, is really nice.
So do you want to go James Conner or Raheem Mostert here, or I'd go Stevenson as well? Any of those 3 picks for me.
I think I like Connor. I'm not sure how the Trey Benson thing's going to work out. You know what? I say that though. I think Connor might be someone that our little draft circle might be out on. I think Trey Benson may be counted on to be too much, and he could just be very fancy Chase Brown, while Connor is ridden into the dust, on his last year of contract. We see that his floor and ceiling are still fine. We expect the offense to be better. So I think in a zero running back room like this, I don't mind that, especially when it opens up a potential later stack with Kyler, who is another quarterback I'm very in on.
Yeah, and I quite like the running back quarterback stack for guys like James Conner, because Kyler isn't one of those dual threat quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson who just rarely checks down. He checks down to a reasonable level. And James Conner's role's been so defined and so good over the last couple of years. I think Trey Benson is a good prospect, and I think he's going to definitely eat into that workload. But I do think James Conner is in for one more decent year before we have to maybe stop drafting him next year.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, and I think Trey Benson's more of a allows them to have depth, because the depth behind them is not bad. So I mean, like he was one of the first few running backs drafted, but I like to check JJ Zacharyason's model and stuff like that, and I think he mixes in fine. He's got continuous upside obviously, but he was also never used as a workhorse back in college. So I think he profiles more as a change of pace back to help alleviate some of the load, especially in games that they're winning. So yeah, I still like him a lot, especially if his price is gonna stick around this like seventh, eighth round.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of rookie stuff, if you want to get a copy of Rich's rookie guide, 118 player preview in there, almost 200 pages, including his rookie model, which is tested out really well over the years. Hit the join button down below, choose the silver package, and that will get you access. That'll get you into the Discord, and that'll get you Rich's rookie guide, which is being updated this week to include everything post draft, and it is incredible. So we're a few picks away. If Raheem Mostert comes back to him, are we going to add that, or do you want to look at the Pittsburgh running backs who both, back in ADP? I'm kind of in on Najee Harris for the first time ever because at this price it feels much more acceptable. And of course, he goes off the board right as we say that. But which of those are you kind of looking at, Tyler, or is there someone else standing out?
No, I think Najee and Warren both stand out as awesome targets. I mean, this is an Arthur Smith offense. We know they're going to run way more than they're going to pass. They have they have veteran quarterback and Justin Fields quarterback, but two quarterbacks that do take a lot of sacks, and they're going to want to play run smash football with strong defense. They think they can mitigate the strong offenses in their division by controlling the ball, controlling the clock. I can see both of these guys eating really well. Jalen probably having a little bit more pass catching upside, especially with Russell Wilson in town, who does pass to the running backs a lot. So, both of those guys looked really fun. Mostert, obviously older in age, but he was trusted at the goal line as the bigger back. He still has the biggest size of any guy on the team, and we have a team stack. So, and we've got ADP value. So I think it's going to be hard to say no to Raheem.
Absolutely. The amount of touchdowns he scored last year were incredible, and obviously we're expecting some level of regression there. But he just signed a new contract too. He's not going anywhere. The team clearly value him, and I'm fine to trust him for this season. After Jalen Warren, the running back position definitely gets a bit murkier. You end up with guys like Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, Trey Benson, obviously, who we're not going to take Trey Benson after taking James Conner. Question in the chat: O-line upgrade is great for Pittsburgh running backs. Does Najee extension give any concern? I mean, if Najee ends up with an extension, then definitely it would change how I kind of think about it. But Jalen Warren was just so explosive, so fun, and I just kind of chase that for fantasy. I'm much happier chasing that, even though I think that Najee Harris is going to look good in this scheme. So yeah, definitely a good question in terms of where the Steelers are at. And I think most likely I'll end up sort of 10% on Najee, 15% on Jalen Warren if I had to put a guess on it right now.
Yeah, I mean, if Najee got extended, I mean, I don't think they suddenly take away Jalen, who was just as effective in a lot of ways and a little bit younger. So, and I'd imagine that extension would be mostly team friendly given the running back market. And I don't foresee that coming anytime soon. So right now we're looking at stacking up Purdy with Ayuk, or taking a shot on upside JMO, who might have won the draft as far as Lions receivers are concerned. I lean stack, obviously, especially skinny stack. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd take Brock Purdy there. I've got no hesitation on that one.
Yeah. Especially now because he's got another stacking partner late. We've mentioned him a couple times.
Well, that's it. I mean, you're talking about the added benefit of two players. There's ambiguity between them. I know that some within the draft community for the second option, who they took later, was actually better than the first one. We got a question in the chat from Rory, one of our YouTube members. When drafting this early, do you lose the benefit of adding week 17 correlation? To an extent, yeah. And there was definitely a point last year where I know a bunch of us started looking at how many teams had played the same opponents year on year over those last 3 weeks. And you can definitely do a bit more intra-division stacking and stuff like that to try and counterbalance it. But it's kind of offset by the value that we're getting compared to what will be set in stone ADP for a large chunk of the year. Is that the way you feel on it, Tyler?
Yeah, and there's ways that we can mitigate it too, right? Like week 17 stacking does help, and that is a thing we can do. But we also see that a lot of a good chunk of those games are interdivision. So you can try to build some of that lucky banking in to that. But yeah, I think at this point, what you might lack in week 17 stacking, you can make up for in CLV, which we know is super important. What a great freeze frame. And as well as talking about week 17 make me feel like, but then as well as trying to avoid dead roster spots with mindful drafting of teams that and players that will benefit, and you can't control injuries, but you can help some of that by targeting maybe less fragile, risky uh, players that we might be overconfident in their role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great shout. And in the chat saying schedule release rumored to be May 9th. That'd be fantastic. We're sort of like about 10 days away from there. I think we will start to get them drip fed out very soon. Normally we get the international games slightly earlier. I know a lot of people over here in the UK being very excited for that. No more Derrick Henry playing Houston in week 17. No, but Derrick Henry absolutely going to be set up to smash in Baltimore this year. We will definitely be taking a few Ravens if I can force Tyler's hand into that over these next few games. We are one pick away. We've got one quarterback in Brock Purdy, two running backs, James Conner, Raheem Mostert, 5 wide receivers so far, and our elite tight end in Travis Kelce. Where do you want to go with this pick, Tyler?
That's a great question. We got stacking options in Tua and Trevor Lawrence. I'm not touching Nick Chubb in the top 130 given his injury profile. Just personally, running back here, Devin Singletary and Tajay are okay. We've got Tua triple stack, so that's probably the pick. We just bank on Tua finally figures it out late this year, unless you feel strongly about another
No,
player.
I'd be fine taking Tua. The only other thing I would have said is maybe we could push it around the corner, but I'm kind of quite happy given that we've built such a Miami stack. We'll just lean into it and take him. And then, is there an argument to be had that in these early best balls, we want to lean into 3 quarterback builds or embrace the fragility of the 2 quarterback builds? It's something that I could definitely go back and forth, and I definitely wouldn't want to take Trevor Lawrence for 3 quarterbacks in a row. But if he came back in round 12, perhaps.
Yeah, I think cost is the true differentiator there.
Massively so. So yeah, we're a couple of picks away. And I think we're kind of we've done enough at running back that if we wanted to push that another round, we could. But it tends to be a fairly fruitful area of the draft. And Devin Singletary was one of those players who did well coming out of the draft. I think I'd be happy taking him. Tajay Spears, I do think he's going to be a better player than Tony Pollard this year. But yeah, I'd lean towards Singletary. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, we've just seen him be trusted and used as the veteran back over and over again, and now he's reunited with the coach that used him and loved him as much as he did previously in Buffalo. So I think, given his profile, his contract, and his coach, I think he's going to be a staple for me, given how the draft also worked out.
Lovely stuff. And if this is your first time finding the name of Sanctuary, there is loads on the channel right now. Today we put out Rich's Dynasty rankings for Superflex leagues. Picks 1 through 36 are on the channel. 10-minute video. Put a bit of special pixie dust on that one, trying to make it really zip. So I would really appreciate people checking that out. There is draft winners and losers. Last night there was a Dynasty rookie mock draft for 3 rounds. Really good content. We've got loads more coming down the line. And like I say, when DraftKings launches, I will be firing up the DraftKings streams as well. For those of us who are locked out of these fine underdog streets. Tyler, if they launch weekly winners again anytime soon, is that a format that you're going to be playing in much?
if they make some adjustments to how the field size is and how the payouts work, I'll definitely have a hard time avoiding firing off some shots. I don't know that I'll be prioritizing it given some of the other contests available, um, but it's still a fun thought puzzle to kind of crack. And I definitely have some like lessons learned from last year that I'd like to implement. So potentially, I think it's just going to pin some of the specific structures. If they do I think if they do some that are not full season, I think that'll be a really fun wrinkle to attack for sure.
Nice. So we're kind of, into the 12th round now, two-thirds of the way through the draft. What's kind of standing out on these teams for you outside of ours? Any particular teams that you really like what they've got going on?
Well, I mean, I think one thing to also be mindful of with zero running back is that, this team here in the 10 hole starting six is you're going to be mindful to not overdo it. And you want to really trust those guys. And the second I say that, he does stack Jaden Jahan, but Jahan's got such a poor profile coming into year three, given that they also drafted, Luke McCaffrey. So, I mean, that pick works in a stacking sense, especially if Jaden hits his ceiling passing, but you're also hoping that Jaden's not relegated to the third or fourth target option with Luke McCaffrey and Ben Sinnott added as well. So I think, being mindful about if you start running back heavy or wide receiver heavy, you want to balance that out through the rest of the draft and kind of trust the bets you've made. I think some people do that better than others. And then draft allocation is also going to be something mindful to keep at the forefront.
Yeah, so we're sitting at a 2-3-5-1. Are you happy that this can be a two quarterback build, or do you want to lean into possibly a later quarterback later on, or for now, is it just not worth worrying about?
I think it's something that we keep in our back pocket and see if everybody else is kind of sticking with two and it pushes someone down interesting. I think that's a time to pounce on it. But for now, I think these two provide a decent pairing. At this point, it's ugly. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, Blake Corum's kind of fine, or Ty Chandler. I like Ty Chandler definitely. But yeah, otherwise, Brandon Cooks was a player who I felt came out of the draft well. But whoever you're happy with there.
let's see if we can't push Chan. Well, I don't get Pete's magic fingers. What a scam! I guess the internet works different in Boston.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick, though. I think Ty
No, I don't.
Chandler is definitely, what he showed last year. I never really expected him to push on and be every down workhorse running back this year. I think it was definitely a little, he caught fire when he did, and it was good, but that was about it. In terms of where we're looking at next, if we want a wide receiver, Michael Wilson is at the top of the list. I do like Michael Wilson. I think in terms of the other wide receivers around, Jalen Polk, who you just highlighted, Malachi Corley and Jermaine Burton, some of these rookies who are probably going to get a little bit of hype. We've got 5 rookies in our queue, and I'll let you take your pick of them, Tyler.
Hmm. I like Lloyd's ability to mix in, but I think Polk might be someone that rises as a weapon that they can utilize. That wide receiver room in New England is so dusty. Polk is an exciting player. He had a teammate in Roma Dunze drafted, in the top 10. And then McMillan, another teammate, also got drafted. So I think as far as guys that could be also with the build we had, we started, wide receiver heavy with veterans. I like to take shots on rookies that could really outperform ADP, especially down the stretch. And Polk is a really interesting profile in that, given his speed, given his ability to manage another awesome freeze frame on a camera, just really struggling as its debut stream. But and we talked about stacking, and that also unlocks a rookie quarterback stack late as well. So I like that type of bet a lot at that point in a really flat, ugly area of the draft.
Well, we're not going to worry about the internet issues tonight because, much like everyone in the best ball streets, getting reps in, getting them out of the way early on, and by the time August comes around, it is going to be flawless, no doubt. Any thoughts to another tight end in this range? We do only have one so far. The further we push it, the more likely we are going to have to consider whether we want to take 3. Pat Fryermuth, Michael Mayer, Hunter Henry, Isaiah Likely, Jonnu Smith, Juwan Johnson, all kind of around there. Noah Fant, who I'd definitely be interested in, is somebody whose ADP is later, but I think we're going to see him pushed up into at least the 16th round before too long. But yeah, is your lean to take care of tight end now, or do you want to look at some of these other rookies we still got in the queue above them?
I think we're getting to a sweet spot at tight end where you don't want to be missing out too much. That said, taking Travis Kelce, an elite tight end, gives you a little bit of trust and faith. But ideally, I don't think I want 3 tight ends with an elite tight end build. So at this point, I think wrapping up tight end early with a stack would be really beneficial. It's just going to depend on how the board falls. But yeah, some of the tight ends get really ugly, and I think that's a place to start really hammering later as we learn some of these ambiguous tight end backfields as they shake out and the ADP doesn't react fast enough. Right now, I don't think that's where I want to go.
Are you ever down with the single tight end build? I know it's something which people have messed with, and like occasionally it's gotten to the finals and done okay.
I don't think it's optimal, especially BBM is a 3-week gauntlet, and you've got to advance 2 of 12, 1 of 13, and 1 of 16 into a 539 final. And in that final specifically, if your only tight end that you have is a tight end that's drafted 100% of the time, and depending on and if you made it with a single tight end, Kelce probably had an awesome stretch, so he's going to be one of the higher owned tight ends in the finals. As far as differentiating yourself from the field, that doesn't help you as much as you'd like it. Now, I talked all that talk, but Drake May also fell. So we've got a quarterback skinny stack we could load up, see about maybe pairing him with his tight end around the wrap. I think I lean that way over Marshawn, even given
that's what was standing out to me. So yeah, I'm happy with that. And then if Hunter Henry doesn't make it back, then that's no
okay.
big worry. We can deal with that. But yeah, in terms of the team, I think I like that quarterback room. I think that's one with plenty of upside, as well as safety to a level that we're not really hunting for safety in best ball, but you don't want a floor that's non-existent. Just ask all my Trey Lance teams from a couple of years ago. One of my most painful best ball bad beats was making a semi-final with a team with Trey Lance and Matt Ryan as the only 2 quarterbacks, and Matt Ryan hadn't played in weeks and did come back for that game, but it wasn't enough to save it and get to the final. We are 2 picks away. Hunter Henry still on the board. We just auto-clicking Hunter Henry makes it to us.
I do that, and then I'm done at tight end, I'm done at quarterback, and then we can just plow through at running back and receiver. I like that a lot.
Absolutely, and I think that's that's a nice makeup. We've got the Dolphins triple stack. We've got the Brandon Ayuk, Brock Purdy skinny stack, and then we've got the Drake May, Hunter Henry skinny stack. This is exactly the kind of team which I like to build. It feels good to be back stacking best ball teams.
So nice.
When you look at this board, how different do you feel it is to the best board, the big board drafts which you were doing a couple of weeks ago?
Well, Drake May still falling like he was doing in pre-draft. Hunter Henry not moving. So unshockingly, the uglier, nastier, less fun teams in New England, Carolina not moving too much at all. Chuba obviously falling by about 20 picks after they drafted Jonathan Brooks as the first running back. I think that's right. J.K. Dobbins weirdly moving up. I guess market deciding that and not to put Travioli, who is in the chat, on blast, but they did draft Vidal, the running backs coach, retweeted Coach Speak Index talking about his explosion and his really exciting profile. Gus is still there. JK coming back from an Achilles. So interestingly enough, the people drafting right now, their favorites are kind of moving up, similar with Rico. But some players just kind of sitting in ADP, and I think it's going to take probably 3-4 days for some folks to really move up and down, and then to like that first wave of projections to really move it off of where we were sitting in pre-draft. Especially with, you look at a player like Herbert. They did draft Ladd McConkey, so him not moving up much at all. He's probably, I don't want a lot of Herbert this year, but if he's going to be going around Jaden Daniels in the 130s for a good chunk, that's going to be an interesting, easy spot to really build with a a promising quarterback, even if it's not one that's been super valuable in fantasy, maybe more so because of injury than because of, level of play.
Yeah, Herbert's an interesting one. Like he was somebody who I'd considered looking at for MVP odds in the idea that perhaps Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh shaped him into an efficient quarterback, and he got there on efficiency and high touchdowns in the way that obviously Lamar, when he won it in 2019, he also did incredible work with his legs. But the moment I went to look at the MVP odds, Herbert was set at 16-1, which were the same odds as Lamar Jackson, which just seemed outrageous. I'm an incredibly biased Ravens fan, but there is no way that Herbert should be sitting at the same odds as the two-time MVP.
No,
So we're rounding into round 16. I think when you look at the teams around us, there's definitely some nice build, but it feels, pretty damn good to me. Can you just recap the team for us, Tyler?
would love to. I was just hoping you'd ask me to do that. So to service these fine audio listeners, at quarterback, we have Brock Purdy, Big Cock Brock, as he is known around the streets. We have Tiny Tua Tagovailoa, and we have Drake, the next coming of Christ May. At running back, so far we have James Conner, Raheem Mostert, Devin Singletary, Ty Chandler. I think some interesting shots at starting running backs, as well as some contingent and maybe even standalone RB2s. Wide receiver, we have Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Amari, why is he in the 5th round? Cooper, Brian, please be the better Gabe Davis, Thomas Jr., Jalen Polk, and at tight end, we are all done with Travis Kelce, please don't be dust, and Hunter Henry, please don't be dust. Man, praying twice for that. Maybe that was not the ideal stack at tight end, but if we're right, we're right.
Yeah. So in terms of the running backs who are left, the ones that stand out to me are Bucky Irving, Ray Davis, Isaac Rendo gives a bit more San Francisco correlation. Anybody else you'd want to make a case for?
I think Will Shipley potentially, especially for like contingency, but no, I agree. I think the one that's got the best odds to mix in and be a thorn in the side given draft capital and profile, probably Bucky Irving, considering Rashad, the rushing aspect of his game is where he kind of struggled. That's probably my lean. Ray Davis obviously has the allure of Buffalo, but his draft capital and James Cook being as good as he is, I think I'm Bucky Irving here.
Yeah,
Especially
I'm fine with
considering
that.
he's also got a pass catching profile to himself.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I like Rashad White, and I think he's shown real signs of improvement as a rusher over the last couple of years. But, with this kind of gulf of difference between him and Rashad White, it feels like by the time the summer rolls around, Bucky Irving could be at least a couple of rounds higher, and we'll just scoop that ADP value nice and early on. So we've got 2 picks left. How many running backs are we aiming for here, Tyler? We've got a 3-5-6-2 build currently. It feels like we probably need at least one more, but would you want to go to the point of 3-7-6-2?
No, I think we have to kind of trust James Conner, Raheem Mostert being healthy and providing level. Devin's a better bet at a RB2. I think 6 is probably where we want to cap it. The question is just, do we want to take that now, or do we want to take some shots on receiver? Because there's later running backs that have interesting profiles.
Yeah, I mean, Luke McCaffrey, Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson's somebody who I really like. I think he was a big draft day winner. The Rams
Agreed.
play 3 wide receiver sets at one of the highest rates. So, yeah, Demarcus Robinson works for me. And then we can take a last shot on running back when it comes back around to round out the draft. But, yeah, can we just scroll up and look at our friend picking up the 105 to see how they dealt with that robust RB elite tight end start that they had. So they did start with 4 consecutive running backs and then a tight end in Trey McBride. So, yeah, so if you go up a little bit more, if you can, Tyler. So we started Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, and then Trey McBride. So they have, after that, there's definitely tried to put it, I guess, more conventional. If you could scroll down a bit for us now and see. So the wide receiver 1 was Marquise Brown, Then went with a quarterback, which is definitely in round 7, something I would have struggled to do. But they stack Jordan Love with Christian Watson and then get the double stack with Romeo Doubs. So by the time they hit round 9, they have 3 wide receivers. Rashid Shaheed, our Lord and Savior, in round 11. I don't know. I mean, Michael Wilson, there's a lot of serviceable guys there, but you are absolutely saying with this running back room that you are going to have at least 3 of those 4 starting each and every week. And absolutely, Pete has warned us about starts like this. That video is very much worth watching. There are ways.
I don't know if taking a guy like Michael Wilson, who's had a questionable year 2 profile coming in, just got Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best wide receiver prospects to come in. Greg Dortch signed to kind of be their slot guy for the year. If I'm behind at wide receiver that badly, I'm taking a much bigger shot than a guy whose median outcome floor week to week is, 2-3 targets for 40 or yard lesser yards. At that point, the only way that pays off is if the offense really, really hums much better than we think. And, someone like Connor goes down. So the running backs are so thin and poor that they're airing it out more. But Kyler still has a rushing floor coming off of a year where now he's a full year removed from the ACL. You probably want to take a higher upside shot at wide receiver if you're that behind, especially given that you also took Romeo Doubs, who is part of a 5 wide receiver rotation. You probably got to lean into the rookies and hope to really, really outperform ADP at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's like a really good point because it's like when you align yourself with something which doesn't work historically, you need to be betting on nuclear outcomes for loads of different things. And like you say, you're not looking to just get on base from your wide receivers. You're betting, okay, the running backs are all going to be outstanding, but you still need those wide receivers to go really, really hard.
You got to go toe to toe with everybody else. You're going to take Michael Wilson his wide receiver 4 is Michael Wilson. Ours was Amari
Brian
Cooper.
Johnson or Amari Cooper. Yeah,
it's like I don't want that 1v1. So you might want to aim a little bit higher. Let's just make.
Okay, so we're coming up on our last pick on our first Underdog Fantasy Best Ball show this year. We will be back every Monday doing these. Top of the running back queue is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who did re-sign with the Chiefs on a very cheap deal. Dylan Laub, Tyrone Tracy, Isaac Guerrero, and then a whole lot of players who don't really want much part of. Maybe Tank Bigsby at an absolute squeeze, but which one of these guys is standing out to you the most, Tyler?
I mean, Clyde is the RB2 right now behind Pacheco, and we've seen that contingent value. He's not called meh for nothing, but he's in a great offense. We have a bet on Kansas City. He probably outproduces some of these other rookies. That said, Lauby's divisional correlation could really mix in standalone as like a pass catcher, and Guerrero has team contingent upside.
I mean, if we're going sort of like week 17 stuff, I'd probably lean towards Lau, just into that idea that, okay, if he hits, he's going to hit towards the back end of the season. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we've seen that like when the games matter, the Chiefs just don't really trust him. I know they brought him back, and I know that he's been with the team for a while now. But when the games seem to really matter, Clyde Edwards-Helaire rarely seems to get on the field for me. So I think if we had a slightly different spin on that pick, I think you definitely could have taught me into Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I like the Dylan Lau pick there. So in terms of our draft, I mean, let's take a look at Omega's team drafting from the 103 before us. I mean, incredibly sharp guy, always in the winnings. Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Devin Achan, Jonathan Brooks, Marshawn Lloyd, Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, Kamani Vidal. That is a rookie sensational sort of running back room. Jamar Chase, Tank Dell, Jordan Addison, Chris Godwin, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, Khalil Shakir. And we'll just leave that one there. Malik Washington, Dalton Kincaid, and K. Dotton, both tight ends stacked. You've got a nice pivot to Khalil Shakir as the Buffalo stack, and then Chris Godwin in there as well. I think that's a really nice team. Any other teams that stood out to you?
I always like to check if the CMC team ruined itself. I think that's evident because of how heavy they invested at quarterback early. That's, if we're talking about no-nos, I don't know that I advocate. I mean, especially with
3 wide receivers in the top 100 picks.
Yeah, anytime you can bet on a bunch of vets that may be out of jobs or might be really bad, to fill out your wide receiver room, you got to do it. And then I think Travioli went really interesting with the rookie quarterback builds. Built, I think, as far as construction and stacks are concerned, really nice building out his stacks with his teams. Probably a little thin at tight end, but his bet is that Dulcich is the starting tight end and Bo Nix is the tide that lifts all ships. So really clean construction there. I think that was another good call out, building early.
Absolutely. So in terms of everything else, how do you? Let's just go back to our team briefly, just for a moment, if you would. Like, is there anything in there that you wish we'd done differently?
I think Travis Kelce without Patrick Mahomes doesn't feel great. But that said, it's interesting to have QB tight end pairings that could provide unique leverage value in the playoff week, specifically week 17, because there is a path where Kelce catches 2 touchdowns and hits our lineup, but Pat doesn't throw touchdowns to any other player that matters. They salt the game with Pacheco, and all of a sudden, Mahomes isn't the guy you need, but we've got Tua triple stacked, a rookie with rushing upside double stacked, and Brock Purdy with a skinny stack. So I don't know that I really regret anything. I think we played the pockets as well as we could, knowing that the pockets are kind of moving. I think we also correctly went rookie late in our running back room to, leverage some of that uncertainty that could be upside potential if those guys hit, which I think you need in a room where you went 0 RB. And then and our favorite Pete uses the word texture, applying that as well to the wide receiver room. And then we've got some really nice texture for guys with high weekly upside, safe floors for, as far as dead roster spots go, and some really upside, interesting rookies. I'm looking at this first draft. Usually the first one's kind of ugly. You think you maybe struggled or panicked, but I think we played this really well. Juggling a really smart, sharp room, especially when we look at, as long as my quarterbacks are stacked, I feel good. And I think we've got the guys who are biggest question marks to be fantasy producers stacked more heavily than the guy who has, Brock's got such a high floor weekly with his whole offense, that I think that was probably the prudent move for leveraging him through the playoff weeks.
Yeah, no, I really like it. I think, like you say, the first draft of the year in a contest always feels a bit difficult because you're fighting ADP, you're fighting people reaching against certain points. But this one felt very kind of good. The values it fell to us felt nice. And it's got everything that I look for in a team in terms of upside, in terms of stacks, and in terms of, it doesn't feel too fragile anywhere. We will wrap things up there. We will be back next Monday for another Underdog Ball Mania Draft. We'll see what else is out there in the streets. I would back probably on Wednesday when DraftKings launches their contests. See what else happens over the week. Maybe throw out another Best Ball stream if we get a chance. And Rich will have more Dynasty stuff coming. From me, Tyler, truly do appreciate everyone in the chat. You guys are all absolute rock stars. And we'll be back very soon.